Today on The Report, we discuss how President Trump's policies outpaced the Project 2025 playbook after 100 days in office.
Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney wins the Canadian election.
Plus, Sean Diddy Combs faces trial for sex trafficking charges.
And why President Trump issued an executive order to defund U.S. public media. The report starts now.
Welcome back to another episode of The Report. I'm Juliana White.
I'm Allison Goye.
I'm Ariana Hartman.
And I'm Alejandra Chavez. Don't forget to follow our Titan TV Instagram at Titan TV CSUF to keep in touch with us and view our latest content.
In one of Canada's most important federal elections in recent history, newly appointed Prime Minister Mark Carney and his Liberal Party have sustained leadership over the nation, while third-party groups, both left, right, and center, have dramatically lost most of their seats in Parliament. Following the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's sudden resignation from public office and a steady rise in the Conservative Party's poll numbers, Prime Minister Mark Carney's team was gearing up to be a short one as federal elections were slated to take place before October 2025. Though, with tensions rising between the Canadian government and the Trump administration, Minister Carney assured the Canadian people that the country would stand firm against his tariffs, stating, quote, "He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed," end quote. Though the Liberal Party currently leads as a minority in the House of Commons, both primary parties pulled major seats from the third-party opposition groups, New Democratic and Bloc Québécois, with former under-Canadian Indian Jagmeet Singh taking a historic loss of 17 of their 24 seats, and his immediate resignation as party leader following elections. Political analysts blame the Conservative Party's loss on President Trump for his aggressive rhetoric against Canada over the past few months, with party leader Pierre Poilievre losing his own seat in the House of Commons. Okay, so what are we thinking about Canada's recent election, and do we think that it does have an influence of the United States with it turning to the Liberal side?
Well, it's definitely one of the most dramatic political swings that we have seen in Canada since everything Trump has been saying really make Canada think about who they want as their next prime minister. And with everything that he said in his speech, he mentioned Trump several times and stated his opinion on how he does not agree with the measures taken by Trump, and he's not going to let that happen.
Mm-hmm. I was very, very shocked, actually, to see the results. I was very sure that the Conservative Party was going to go ahead and take that lead. So that was really, really shocking to see. And again, I definitely see why it is blamed on the Trump administration. I think there's just rising tensions between us and Canada, unfortunately. And right now, I think Canada feels very, very unified. And they knew that they had to come together to take a stand. And I think they do see our country just as an example of the way that things could go based on the way that they do vote. So I think that is the reason why it did lead to the Liberal Party kind of leading in Canada. But again, it came definitely just as a shock, especially because Trudeau was not very well liked in Canada, to say the very least. So it was definitely unexpected.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. I was pretty shocked to see that the Liberal Party won against the Conservative Party in Canada after everything that, they didn't really like Justin Trudeau. But I also can see the other side of how they see what's happening to their next door neighbors, and they don't want that to happen to them. I do think that it's also a really strong message, whether they were Conservative or Liberal Party. I think that whether Mark Carney was on either side of the aisle, the fact that he is so adamant to kind of go against what Trump is saying and not comply with these tariffs, I think that on either side of the aisle, people would support that. As President Trump completes his first 100 days in office for a second term, many of his policies are enacted from the Project 2025 Playbook. The 900-page Conservative Manifesto is designed to reshape policy, personnel, training, and operational planning in federal agencies. Project 2025 tackles sections including taking the reins of the government, the common defense, the general welfare, the economy, and the independent regulatory agencies. Starting with immigration, one of Trump's first orders to troops were to, quote, seal the borders and maintain the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and security of the United States, end quote. This aligns with Project 2025's border chapter, authorized by Ken Cuccinelli, a lawyer and politician who wrote, quote, prevent illegals from crossing between ports of entry and channel all cross-border traffic to legal ports of entry, end quote. The border chapter emboldens the U.S. to the troops and National Guardsmen to, quote, assist in arrest operations along the border, something that has not yet been done, end quote. The opening sentence of the conservative manifesto on the Department of Education reads, quote, federal education policy should be limited, and ultimately the federal Department of Education should be eliminated, end quote. On March 20th, President Trump signed an executive order to eliminate the Department of Education, which adopted language from Project 2025. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is another target for the conservative agenda. The blueprint calls for the administration to be, quote, dismantled and many of its functions eliminated, sent to other agencies, privatized, or placed under the control of states and territories, end quote. The Trump administration is planning on cutting its 2026 budget by 25%, shutting down offices and defunding climate, weather, and ocean research. As we report on a few of the many policies aligning with the Project 2025 playbook, it is worth noting that several contributors and authors of the conservative blueprint are now part of the government's executive branch. Wow. This Project 2025 manifesto is really coming into play. So we see a bunch of the authors in his cabinet, and we've heard Trump say, I don't know anything about Project 2025. I'm not following that, but it really seems like he is. So what do we all think about that?
Well, it is surprising that he is denying that he's not following this manifesto, since he has signed 140 executive orders in his 100 days, and 1/3 of those orders align with this Project 2025. And a lot of people have been commenting on like the consequences that can come with this Project 2025. And it could be like aggressive deregulation with environmental rollbacks and business and financial deregulations, in addition to like social policy shifts, like in abortion or LGBTQ rights and more. So people are really scared about what's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is really interesting that he does continue to deny that he's not following this playbook at all. But even early on, some of his, like before the election was happening, when he was campaigning, some of his talking points aligned perfectly with Project 2025. And also, as you were saying, that some of the authors are also on his team. So there's really no denying that he is following it for making the different rules and like how he's doing his presidency right now.
Yeah, there's only so much to see in his next 100 days in office, right? He could be signing more and more of these laws and executive orders that do align further with the playbook. But I think this was his plan all along. This is what I think personally. Even when he was campaigning, Project 2025 was a very, very big issue. I think even just like a bipartisan issue in general. Of course, the Democrats are not going to agree with it at all, but there was even some opposition in the Republican Party of the Project 2025. And when he was campaigning, he kept continuously saying that he had nothing to do with it, he didn't know what it was, et cetera, et cetera. But if we look at the evidence that we're seeing, if it really is aligning with the Project 2025 book, like I think he did know what he was getting into. I think he did purposely do this, again, like just to align with his policies. But I don't think he was never going to outwardly say that in the first place, unfortunately. Like that's unfortunately how politics is in this day and age, and how it's always been. You know, you're never going to say exactly what your true plan is once you get into office. You're going to say what the people want to hear first. But again, you know, things could change. We don't know how his next 100 days are going to turn, but it's definitely worth looking at closer. President Donald Trump signed an executive order instructing the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to halt all federal funding to National Public Radio and the Public Broadcasting Service this past week. The order not only bans direct funding, but also blocks indirect financial support from local stations. The executive order calls on the Corporation of Public Broadcasting to update its 2025 rules to formalize this shift and instructs federal agencies to end current funding streams and audit existing contracts. The Trump administration claims that NPR and PBS have used taxpayer money to, quote, fuel partisanship and left-wing propaganda, end quote. To fact-check the Trump administration statement, NPR and PBS were founded to serve the public good through accessible and non-commercial programming funded in part by the CPB, alongside private donations and corporate sponsorships. PBS in particular was envisioned as a collaborative platform to develop educational programs, especially for children, that could be televised nationwide. PBS President Paula Kerger said, quote, "These dollars from local stations helped us raise generations of kids," end quote. Critics of the executive order argue that cutting federal support would be devastating, particularly in rural areas where public media is a critical source of education. Representative Adam Smith of Washington State called the order a move towards authoritarianism, claiming the president is attacking fact-based journalism under the appearance of eliminating bias. Smith noted that over 160 million Americans rely on public media each month for impartial news. In response to the order, Patricia Harrison, president and CEO of the CPB, clarified, quote, "CPB is not a federal executive agency subject to the president's authority. In fact, Congress prohibited any government entity from controlling public broadcasting or CPB itself," end quote. We will be monitoring how the U.S. public media is impacted under the Trump administration. So I don't know about you guys, but I saw all over social media NPR and PBS, because these are two, NPR, a lot of people listen to NPR, right? Especially me, myself included. I listen to NPR every single day. But I think PBS had a very harsh blow, I think, especially to Gen Zers, because again, we see that there's a good chunk of Gen Zers that are already opposed to the Trump administration, right? But then you have, we grew up on PBS, specifically PBS Kids, and that's what I saw a lot of posts talking about, like PBS Kids, and people getting really, really upset from that. And again, I just think that's just leading to more and more Gen Zers going against, because it's like once you mess with Sesame Street, then what? That's what people are seriously getting worked up about that. And that just goes to show where people's issues lie and like how much they're willing to take from this administration until it actually, is going against something that they grew up with.
Totally. And we've seen President Trump and his administration, specifically Caroline Leavitt, his press secretary, fight against these journalists and journalism conglomerates who are just fact-based. Like the whole Gulf of Mexico and Gulf of America dispute with AP still kind of hasn't been resolved, even though there was a Supreme Court decision on it. He's immune. There's nothing that's going to happen to him or his cabinet for not having AP in the room anymore, or specific journalists from AP. But yeah, to add on to the whole PBS Kids thing, I remember every single day before elementary school, like watching Arthur or Word World. And so that kind of just stabs me in the heart. I want other generations of kids to have that same upbringing, and that, I guess, makes me kind of a nerd. Like, I loved watching PBS, and now I'm kind of nerdy, and I love it. And I think that it really makes for a smarter child population.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting that they did decide to cut funding for them because, well, for one, NPR, it is an attack on journalists, which he's been doing throughout his presidency. But also with PBS, it's a core learning station for children who aren't able to attend preschool. And so by cutting this, you're cutting access to education for millions of kids all over America. And also, I want to add that when I did first see this story break, it was really sad because I saw Elmo tweet out that he needs a hug today. And my heart was broken.
Hugs to Elmo.
I also grew up watching PBS, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Here we're talking about education and journalism. So what message is he trying to say by denying these broadcast and radio non-profit organizations, like denying denying funds? And about that, like CPB president and CEO says that he does not have the authorities to make such a mandate, since the organization was created by the Congress. So I hope like having that information out would help people like realize, okay, maybe he doesn't have the power that he says he has. I know as the president he does contribute with a lot of like decision making. However, we have seen this happening several times along these 100 days. Since he's gonna cut funds, he has been threatening Canada, Mexico, and now we're seeing it's happening. So we just have to wait to see what happens. On the morning of President Trump's 99th day in office, 100 mugshots, posters of unnamed, detained, and undocumented immigrants with their alleged crime were lying along the perimeter of the White House's North Lawn. On the X platform, the White House posted the mugshot and revealed the immigrants' identities. In a statement timed to align with his 100th day in office, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announced, quote, "The president will sign 2 executive orders on Monday to empower law enforcement to pursue criminals and to publish a list of U.S. jurisdictions that obstruct the enforcement of federal immigration laws," end quote. The White House's approach has been met with growing criticism. Advocacy groups and legal experts have pointed to the revocation of international student visas, the deportation of U.S.-born children alongside their non-citizen parents, the transfer of immigrants to Salvadorian prisons without due process, and now the possible reopening of the notorious Alcatraz prison for deportees. A recent CBS News poll found that 49% of Americans approve of the president's handling of immigration, while 51% disapprove. Shortly after the posters were shown to the press, White House Border Caesar Tom Homan stated, quote, "If you are an illegal alien in the United States, this message is for you. You cannot hide from ICE. We are actively looking for you," end quote. Wow, this final quote really leaves me speechless. It's definitely they want to scare people. They want them to know that they do not belong here, and they want them gone. So this really it makes me do a lot to wonder. Mostly like what is the message you're trying to give to everybody, not only immigrant population, since we understand that there's a lot of immigrants that have committed crimes and they should be deported with the right process to be done. However, here, showing their faces, paraded them around, what are we doing there? You just want to scare us all and have this administration where everybody's scared of you, or what are you guys' thoughts?
I think that we're all just kind of speechless. I mean, that last quote that you mentioned about them just, it's just total fear-mongering, and they're just trying to scare people, but people should be scared. Like, they have deported so many people without due process, and it's absolutely ridiculous. I think that we're living in such a scary time, but I also think that we're living in a time where if we put enough pressure on the administration, which kind of has been happening with people who are losing their student visas, they rolled that back. So I think the more pressure we put on this administration and into advocacy for immigrants, I think that there will be some positive impacts down the road.
Mm-hmm. Look, I think most people in the country can agree that we want people who commit awful crimes and do bad things in this country. We don't want them in the country, and 100%. I think we can agree on that. But when you're attacking such like a broad population of people and doing it using very, very harsh words that the border czar is doing, which I don't think there even was a border czar position until Trump's new administration. And again, what he said, it's just very scary, not even for me. And I was born in this country. I grew up here. I'm an American citizen. But I can't imagine what it's like for the people who are here, who are on visas, and rightfully so, who did go through that process. And the fact that Trump wants to open up Alcatraz again, that was really, really crazy to listen to on NPR on my drive over here.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. And at the end of the day, people need to realize that he's saying that he wants to do all these things, but where are we going to get all this money from? It's going to go back to the taxpayers, okay? Alcatraz was closed for the primary reason that it was way too expensive to keep open. If he actually wants to do that again, we don't know how he's going to run it. and we don't know who's going to actually pay for it at the end of the day. You know, so many Americans are already suffering because of the tariffs and so many other things being set in place by the Trump administration. So if he does want to do all these other things that he is saying, it's going to lead to way more controversy.
Definitely. I personally don't agree with how he's handling a lot of the immigration stuff. And then now when putting their faces on the White House lawn, I think it is an insult to the people, you know, who are there. Because first of all, he's not giving them due process at all. So there is that. And
No, I understand. Like,
Yeah.
he's trying to generalize all the immigrants, you know? Yeah, we understand that there's criminals, but like you said before, there's people with visas who has been through the entire process, and the administration is trying to scare the people who have been doing the process legally. I think everybody who's done it legally has done the process. This is an expensive process, and they have paid a lot for this. So most people deserve to be here as much as a citizen.
definitely. Sorry, I do have a lot to say about this, so it can be a little hard trying to find the right words to talk about this. But what also is scary, because you were saying that it's scary for you, but you are a U.S. citizen, is that he also is going after U.S. citizens as well. And just right now, it just feels like a total witch hunt to just weed out everyone that they don't agree with. Sean Combs, better known by his stage name P. Diddy, formally rejected the government's deal to plead guilty to a series of charges ranging from racketeering conspiracy to sex trafficking on May 1st. The 55-year-old Combs is scheduled to stand trial today, May 5th, following an indictment launched by New York's Southern District back in September 2024, which alleged his involvement in coercing numerous women into prolonged sex parties. Known as freak-offs, accepting the government's plea deal would have reduced the former rapper's time in prison compared to a conviction of all crimes committed. If he is convicted on all counts, P. Diddy could be facing federal prison time of up to 15 years or more. Okay, so this case has gone on for a really long time. It's gotten a lot of media buzz around it. So what are you guys thinking about this?
I just find it surprising that he's still denying the charges, since there's enough evidence, enough witnesses, enough victims that have spoke up, and all of that. Like, we have the video of him abusing his wife in a hotel room. There's a really traumatizing video. I personally saw it, and it was horrible to see. So I can't even imagine the people that were through this and who have been waiting for, the system to take him to jail after everything that's been going on.
Yeah, it's really, it feels like this has been going on for years at this point, to be honest, because again, just like on social media, people were making so many jokes about it. And again, I know it's so easy to joke about things that don't happen to you or don't affect you personally, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people were joking about it because it's so crazy. You would never think that someone would be able to do this much at this big of a degree and be under wraps for a very, very long time. I mean, he's 55 and now he's finally scheduled to stand trial. And I know that they started the process of picking jurors today. And I could not imagine being in the room where that happens and being one of the jurors who's like in consideration for that. Because again, I know they choose it based on, personal bias, etc. But I feel like this is definitely going to be a trial to really be watching. Like, I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't anticipate it's going to be a short trial at all, but this is definitely going to be one to watch.
Yeah, and I totally agree about the jury. I mean, P. Diddy has been around for ages, and it would be really, really difficult to find a jury who isn't aware of Sean Diddy or of the news that's come out about him recently, or even just Kesha's song, where it's wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy, that's something, that's pop culture, so it's going to be really hard to find a reliable jury for that. Well, a Sprouts Market employee who is a homeless Navy veteran of 8 years is off the streets in Irvine. Thanks to one kind gesture from influencer Jimmy Darts, Darts is known for helping people and gifting them money on the spot for their generosity. In the viral video, Darts approaches Jeff Daly, asking him if he had any extra cash he could spare to buy food. Daly didn't hesitate to help and donated his last dollar. As a gift of kindness, Darts gave $500 to Daly. After the heartwarming encounter, Dart started a GoFundMe for Daley where his followers raised over $100,000. When asked why Daley was willing to hand his last dollar to Darts, he said, quote, "I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, if this man needs baby food for a child, you know what kind of person would say no to that? I'm not built like that," end quote. Daley is currently staying in a hotel while Darts helps him secure a more permanent place to live. I'm so glad that we can end off on such a positive story. I actually saw this on TikTok before seeing some more coverage on this, and I was like, wow, that's a really cute story. And now they've raised over $100,000. This is amazing, and it just goes to show that there's still good in humanity.
Definitely. I think it's amazing what the internet can do, because I've seen a bunch of other accounts do something similar where their followers help fund these channels so then they can give back to the community and help people who are in need.
Yeah, this is definitely a heartwarming story to end the episode today. After everything that has been going on with immigrants, policy is just too much for everybody. So hearing such a good story, it really helps everybody come down, like still have hope in this country.
Not to bring the energy down, but I think these kind of stories are really, really great. However, I feel like I see so many influencers online going to random strangers. I don't like being filmed. If a stranger was filming me and asking me for this with the intention of them posting it on the internet and there being judgment, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I do think it's kind of an abuse of just like getting views and following and stuff. But it's also like, again, you kind of have to weigh out like, it's like the good and the bad. It's like, okay, yeah, that's not necessarily the best, but I guess, when good does happen, it happens like this. And I think it is great that, again, like a homeless Navy veteran, I mean, we definitely need to be better to our veterans than the fact that, he's getting the help that he needs. Again, like, it is important. At the end of the day, it is heartwarming, but it's definitely just, a step in the right direction, but also still a little controversial.
And I do think, though, that rewarding kindness is very powerful, because the more that we reward and incentivize kindness like this, people will tend to be more kind. So as much as I do agree that sometimes these influencers are going out there for whether it's rage bait or just views and attention, I do think that rewarding kindness is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
It's definitely how good looks now in our generation.
Yeah, I definitely agree, definitely. And with that, that's all we have for today.
Good luck on finals, Titans.
And stay tuned for more news, views, and info.
We'll see you next semester on The Report.